Welcome to season 2 of Rabbit Holes with Aaron, where we haven't made any drastic changes, but we believe we get better with time. So enjoy the wide constellation of guests that I have on this show. Enjoy our conversations. Hopefully, you get some nuggets and you can learn and grow and become a better person. Thanks for listening. Welcome to Rabbit Holes with Aaron. I'm Aaron, and today with me as my guest, I have Kendall Keaton. I'm really excited to have her as my guest because I just listened to her podcast a few days ago. She is an identity and performance coach, so we're going to find out a little bit more of what all of that means. But welcome to the show, Kendall.
Thank you so much, Aaron. I'm glad to be here. I'm grateful that you're having me on your show today.
Yeah. So I ask everybody a question to start off. What's something new and exciting happening in your life right now? Could be business or personal.
New and exciting. I would say probably the most exciting thing that's going on, it's kind of top of mind because it has encompassed the last 2 weeks of my life, is I also have a podcast that I am now transferring over. It has only been solo episodes, so it's only just been me speaking, and I'm doing interviews now. So I'm going to get to do a little bit of what you do and get to have really awesome conversations with amazing people. And that's been something new and different for me to be on the other side of that, not just speaking but asking the questions. So I'm excited for this interaction, and I might learn some things from you today, Aaron, and that would be great.
Yes, I have found based on my podcast experience, everybody learns something, both people and then all the people that hear it. So it's been phenomenal. And I'm excited for you to move into that different, framework and see how that goes. Yeah, conversation. I guess that's the first rabbit hole that we can go down. Like how much value, how much really miracle is stuck in my brain lately, how much of a miracle conversation is. What do you think about that?
I think conversation, is really underrated just in the value that it has. It's funny because something I also do is I speak. I'm a keynote speaker. And something that has been coming up in the talks that I do is the conversation or the value of conversation in business. Not just in your personal life, but in being able to relate to somebody else, be able to listen to them. What are they saying? What does it mean? What are you going to, where does that go? And just not just the conversation at hand, but also the connection you can make with that person and what might that next conversation be like. Who do they know? Who will you be able to converse with because you took the time to have a conversation with this person? What rabbit hole will lead from there? Right? Very underrated.
So exciting. Oh my gosh. I love your level of excitement at it as well. Yeah, it reminds me of, it takes me to another recent topic of bartering and how bartering's kind of built into conversation. Maybe conversation is really only at its roots bartering. Like I'm trading my thought and you're trading me your thought. And maybe I trade you something else. And I'll share a quick story. Like with a previous podcast guest, an author, I made a barter with him because I bought his book and I've almost finished it. And in the process, like I saw little editing misses, I guess, throughout the book. And I kind of circled them, put a star on the page, and I bartered him that feedback if he would give me more authors that he knows as guests. And so, but I knew about that. I knew about him craving like to hear about his book. And I answered his request, I guess. What do you think?
That's funny. When you said the word barter, it's funny because something popped up different in me emotionally than what you talked about. Because when you said barter, it's kind of the same thing, but I went, if we look at conversation as like bartering, the first thing that came to mind was almost a negative connotation of like, what could I get out of this? And if that's, I think, where conversations go awry is if we are only involved in that conversation to think, what can I get out of this? That's when you fall into that trap, I think, of trying to think about what you're going to say next instead of thinking about what they're actually saying. Because we're like, how can I, so if we kind of flip that script and look at a conversation instead of what can I get out of this, but what can I give? How would that change that? Like, how would it change that dynamic of that conversation?
Yeah, what can I give out? Well, and I guess that does take me back to that barter with my author friend. Is he, in all his TikToks, he's asking for feedback. He's looking for interaction, and I just hear that, and I'm like, I can meet that. Is there anything that I might need from him that might help me? But you're right. I guess it does seem transactional at some level.
Well, and I don't think like it was both things need to happen, right? It's mutually beneficial. But I was just thinking about the saying, like, I'll scratch yours, you scratch mine. We
Yeah,
say, I'll scratch yours first. Like, that's
yeah,
what comes first in the saying. So it's like, I don't know. I just thought the barter was an interesting term, but also very interesting that it meant something different to you than what it meant to me. Like
yeah.
how we perceive terms is very different.
Well, and when I first realized or brought up bartering in a podcast, to me it harkened. At first, I had two competing images. I had one from the fact that I knew it from history class, like, oh, that's the way we used to do it. That's the old way. Now we're so much more evolved and technologically superior. We don't do things that way anymore. But then as I saw bartering in my life as an even exchange between happy people that grows a relationship, I'm like, why are we doing it the way we're doing it now? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I guess so. Because bartering itself hasn't really it still means the same thing, right? But as time goes by, as technology changes, yeah, we do it in different ways. But everything
Yeah,
is an exchange. It's a cause and effect. Like you give and it's give and get, giving and receiving. You give something, you receive something. You give something, you receive something. It's a give and take. It's a balance. So it's happening
yeah,
regardless, right?
yeah. And we're doing it right now, without even really thinking about it. We're not doing the math. And, at least my favorite part about it is there's no sales tax. There's no tax on our interaction. We're trading freely. And it makes you wonder about that system too in a different light. But yeah, I was thinking about going back to conversation and that rabbit hole. Like there was a rabbit hole off there. I thought of, you know, in my own mind, how do I keep the conversation in this kind of green, healthy, good area where it's give and take and not just take? And I thought about that, and the term listening came to mind. Like listening, really listening. I would love to hear your definition of what really listening looks like for you.
Yeah, so when you were talking about conversation and talking about listening, I think the combination of those two is what makes up communication, which I think is different. I think you
Okay.
can have a conversation, but what are you trying to communicate? Right? And you can't communicate to somebody what you want to communicate if you don't know what they're thinking, and you don't know what they're thinking if you are not listening. So you have got to listen, also knowing your inner intent. What are you trying to communicate to this person? Because you're going to communicate an idea very differently to person A than to person B than to person C. And you don't know how to communicate that if you're not listening to what they're telling you. Because inside of what they're telling you is also what they're thinking.
Hmm.
So I think communication is the theme, is where it's one of when I talk about this and I'm talking in a room or in a corporate space or in a sales space, it's communication is one of the biggest ROIs you have in your business. If you can't communicate what you do, if you can't communicate the value of a conversation, then what do you have? So I think, yeah, communication, to answer your question, or listening, is probably where conversation.
We're getting stuff done, just like we are right now, like 9 minutes, and we're getting stuff talked about, real stuff. I want to turn it over or start it, whichever is more comfortable. Like if you have any questions to fire back, that you can do it at any time. If there's any rabbit hole or any interesting topic that we're kind of walking by right now, you snatch that and you can ask me a question too. And I'm checking in with you right now to allow that, but you can do it at any time.
I think I'm good. I love how you just grab random things. I'm kind of a person I've realized I'm kind of a philosophical person. I love those
Okay.
deep conversations. I had kind of missed that. This is coming out of nowhere, but I'm actually doing an interview with someone soon who is an expert in the Clifton Strengths Do you know what Clifton Strengths is? It's not really a personality assessment, but it kind of is, but it's used kind of in the business sense where they can take a personality assessment to figure out what their strengths are. And I took that assessment so that I can talk about it in this interview. She's going to kind of do some, coaching with me, live. But one of the things that came up when I'm answering all these questions that I had forgotten about myself was I kept answering really strongly to these philosophical questions. And I have not had the time. We get so busy. I have not had the time to just sit down with someone and get into a conversation about, why the stars are the way they are. And, what about this?
Yeah.
So I love your tactic of just grabbing random things and saying,
Yeah. Well, and I know I'm now talking about my podcast and how genius it is, but I absolutely love to figure out another person a little bit, and start to understand how somebody else, everybody else sees the world, through their eyes. Well, and the rabbit hole I'm going to chase down is customer service, because I think about how crucial and how much is lost in customer service these days, right? I'm getting called from somebody from another country that doesn't speak my English very good, and at 2 o'clock in the morning, and asking me if I want to buy a car warranty or something else. It's like, is this what customer service is these days? And on the other side, and I'm sure you're amazing at this too, well, I know from our interactions, right, in lining this podcast up, that communication, it feeds into every part of business, right? But it feeds into customer service in a way that just makes it look like platinum service these days. What do you think about that?
what do you mean by platinum service?
Like better than VIP or VIP service. Like if you get a human on the phone that can actually talk to you and help guide you through whatever your problem or a difficulty is, let's say in navigating a website or their business, then it's like it's better than gold. It's a level above gold. Does that make sense?
So it's almost like what used to be platinum service, like the bar has been lowered. If I can just get somebody who understands the question I asked the first time,
right,
this is freaking fantastic.
Right.
I get what you're saying. So it's funny because you mentioned communication again, which when you said customer service, and you also said right before that about trying to figure ourselves out and trying to figure out another person. You like to figure out that other person. I think that's a big piece. I guess two things are coming up for me right now. We'll go with this. This came up first. Figuring how that other person ticks. I think someone who likes that and someone who's like, God, I wonder what really makes them tick is also going to be a good communicator. Is also going to probably be fantastic at customer service because you care about the inner workings.
Yeah.
Because I have a friend who works in the service industry, right, who has to answer the phone basically and talk to customers all day long who are very irritated. And it is very hard for her to be on the phone getting a call from someone who immediately is angry right when they get on the phone. Right? She has not done nothing, but they're immediately angry. And it has to do, I think, with the state of customer service. And it's hard for her not to be angry back. So if you'll follow me here, I tend to say, and I 100% believe, that what you expect to get, you will get. So if we have this perception that customer service is awful and we're already irritated before we ever even pick up that phone to call somebody because the last dozen interactions were awful, soon as that person picks up the phone, we're expecting irritation. We're expecting not to get what we want. We're expecting to be put on hold. We're already irritated. So the first words that come out of our mouth sound irritated and frustrated with the person who has yet to even earn that. And now we're entering into a conversation that we've set up for failure from the beginning.
Yeah.
So that's a lot of what I think is at the base of a lot of things. You go into an interaction expecting something, and then you're upset, or you're like, see, I told you it was going to go that way. Because you expected it. Therefore, you were already feeling all of those irritated, frustrated emotions before you ever started. And then you just prove yourself right.
Yeah, I mean, I have a Rolodex of stories where I can vouch against myself that I am that person. Like just the other day, AT&T, me and my wife were trying to change our cell phone plan or figure out how we're going to use our cell phones in Thailand. So we were like, Joe's like, well, that's the last thing on my list that we have to get done today. And I'm like, I don't feel like doing it. I don't feel like navigating the labyrinth of, in this situation, AT&T cell phone customer service, right? But, actually, to my credit, to give myself a little bit of extra grace, like before I call, I'm like, okay, and then I resolve that, like, as far as I'm going to give good client service. I'm the
Right.
client, but I'm going to, it's just so many better benefits if you're a good client or a good patient, or a good guest like yourself, on a podcast. It's just like there's a different feeling to it. And, you almost hear customer service, whoever they are, is like they take a big breath too. When you're like, hey, how's your day going, Kate? Because their day has not been going good, to your point. But anyway, I digress. We fully explored that rabbit hole.
Well, I think it's great though, because I think that, I mean, probably a challenge I would give to some people is before you get, I have to get on the phone with my internet service soon, who,
Oh no, okay.
so I have to get on, and I will wait until I'm at a point where I know when they call and I'm transferring service, so I'm going to have to cancel a service. And I already know they're going to talk to me about trying to renew it. They're going to try to give me reason 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 85 why I don't need to cancel. Right? So I prepare myself before I go into this that I have to make sure I am ready to be cordial. And I will tell you, I have really good experiences when I call people and customer service.
Yeah.
In fact, I have a friend who will be like, well, you just call and do this for me. You call because you always get what you want when you call. But I expect to have a good interaction. And I put myself in a frame of mind before I go in there that I'm thinking positive thoughts, I'm feeling positive emotions, and 99% of the time I get a positive result. So, I mean, that's a challenge for people. Before you go into a conversation, if you got to call your internet service, you got to call your phone service, wait a minute and try expecting something good before you call and just see what happens.
Yeah. Yeah.
If they like you, if you make their life easy, they try to make your life easier too. It usually does go better that way.
Well, and to everybody listening and to us as well, I mean, we're talking about exactly this, but to put it into little bite-sized nuggets, I would say before you pick up the phone or answer the call, perhaps in a scenario, take a deep breath, call the person by their name, try and remember to treat them like human if they are. I mean, sometimes it's a computer, but if they're human, and maybe computers are just good practice. I don't know, but there's a few steps there to get, my mind in the right space for an interaction like that.
Any communication you have with anybody, if you are going to if we look at these, we get in these patterns of the same conversation and the same fights. If we look at like our relationships, look at, if you have a partner, you probably have had the same, for a long enough time, you've had the same fight a couple times. It's like the same pattern. You keep having the same fight and the same fight. So you'll put it off, but at some point you have to have this conversation. And in your head, you're going, I don't want to do this because I know exactly how it's going to end up. I know it's going to end up this way. And that thought perpetuates the feeling that you think you're going to have at the end of the conversation before you ever even start it. And so therefore, when you enter into that conversation, you're perpetuating the same pattern if you allow yourself to start it in the emotion, expecting that bad feeling emotion, versus how would I feel if this conversation went exactly as I had planned? And if you go into this conversation expecting something different, you are more likely to get a different result. But if you go into the same argument, same thing, with the exact same, we're doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result, it's the definition of insanity, says Einstein, right? So don't do the same thing. But you can't do something different if you don't think and feel something different. Because our actions are a direct reflect of everything we think and feel. So you are never going to act differently in that conversation until you choose to think and feel differently before you have it. And I guarantee you, if you do that, the conversation will end differently.
I absolutely agree with you. You speak like a person that's seen it work a million times, and I've seen it work a million times too. Let's add our 2 million together for sure. And I love that you're so passionate about that and pushing into that. I remember the podcast episode that I listened to, you spoke about that in greater detail. And like, if you want to know more about that rabbit hole, because I'm about to switch it up, then please see Kendall Keaton's podcast. I forget the name. Can you tell me the name again
Yeah, it's
for our
called
listeners?
it's the identity advantage.
The Identity Advantage. But I am going to jump to another rabbit hole that came to mind, and it's I guess it's more metaphorical and story based, but it's the idea that every person is walking around in some level of civil war. They are at war with themselves. There's at least two sides. And, how can I see that? How could you recognize it? I would say how they talk about themselves and how they talk about others, which makes me think about listening, because you're not going to pick up on that if you're not able to listen. But, recently, and this is the story part, recently me and my wife had a discussion, and I recognized a pattern. I recognized this pattern that my wife, it was like you're saying, my wife would say a similar thing. Maybe she would share an insecurity with me, and I'm not going to go down share too much information with her, but she shared an insecurity with me, and I tried to comfort her. I was like, you know what? That's not true at all. You're amazing, something applicable. I'm not cheesy about it, and try and comfort her. But then there's a counterattack, and I realized that while I was listening to one part and trying to comfort, that was seen as an act of aggression by another part of it. And I said, it just seems like you're in a civil war. And when actually I started saying to her, between me and her, just, we were doing our private life here, I was like, you know what? It sounds like you want me to comfort you, but I've learned to not interact in your personal civil war. And so then there was a vacuum in the room, like all the air had been sucked out. And she was like, well, how do you end a civil war? And I was like, well, that's a good question for the history books, actually, and I kind of redirected and focused around. But that made me, and let me tell the rest of the story very briefly. So from there, she figured out how to make peace with herself, which I'll give you an insider tip, is listening to yourself. And then within the next few weeks, she called every family member and made peace with them too. And it's been blowing my mind open that people are walking around, and anytime they're giving off negativity, I guess, then maybe it's not necessarily their evil intent for others, but it's their internal conflict. What do you think about that theory? Tear me up if you have to.
I love that term because I don't know if you saw my face when you said Civil War. I kind of tilted my head like, what do you mean? Around.
Yeah.
That I understand what you're saying now, and I love that term for it. It's like when people say, there's actually a doctor who wrote a book somewhat similar to this. I think he has a therapy that he works through with people. But it's like when people say like, one part of me really wants to do this, but one part of me really wants this. Like part of me wants this, but part of me wants this. And we have like this internal family of people, right? That's like this.
Right.
I see them almost like an angel on this shoulder and the devil on this shoulder. You've got Jiminy Cricket over here saying this, and you got Geppetto over here saying this. It's like, I don't know what to do or who to listen to. But we have all of these. I absolutely love that term Civil War because it feels like we have different voices inside of us. Like, do this. No, don't do that. That might, it's almost like, I feel like what came up is like, it's our ego. It's our ego-based identity trying to like salvage we're built for survival, right? Our body is built just to keep us safe, right? We're literally wired for homeostasis, which means nothing can change. But yet we want things to change. I'm ready for something new. Something's got to give. I've really got to change this up. But your body says no because anything new is dangerous. I love this analogy. Have you seen the movie The Croods? It's a kid's movie. I think Nicolas Cage plays the guy.
I did not pay attention, so you're going to have to.
It's okay. It's okay. So it's like back in caveman days, and it's funny. You have to watch it. It's called The Croods. So if you're listening and you've not watched it, y'all have homework now. You have to go watch this movie. It's super fun.
Writing it down. Go ahead.
So it's basically back in caveman days, and they live in this tiny cave. Nicolas Cage, the dad and his family, and he does not want them to leave the cave. The cave is safe. The cave is known. The daughter wants to go out, right? She wants to stay out past sunset. She wants to see up, what's over at the hill, and what if there's a better place out there, and Of course, he's like, no, come back into the cave and stay here. They're starving, mind you. They're sharing one giant egg for breakfast. The cave is tiny. They're all sleeping on top of each other. But the cave is known. They have survived the cave. The cave is familiar. Anything outside of that which is unknown, your body, which is like the dad in the movie, fights against it. But then we have this other part of us that's like this big hope for the future. But what if I try this and it works out? Right? What if I do this new thing? What if I apply for this job? What if I go ahead and start the podcast, write the book, right? Have the conversation. That's the daughter who I see as representing like hope. What if it does work out? But you have to leave the cave to do that. It's like our comfort zone. And our body fights against it. It's biologically, we are still in caveman days. Technologically, we have advanced, right? But it takes our bodies millions of years to evolve. But technologically, we have evolved way past that. And I think that's that. We fight against that. Maybe that's the Civil War. I don't know. But it's like, God, there's so much possible. But your body's like, no, don't leave the cave. Right? Well, you know this.
And what I hear you saying is that, like, we were made to be in inner conflict at some level, right? And to embrace it. Well, and, that makes me, we're going crazy here, but makes me think about, bones and how every time your bones are broken, they get stronger. And, and the more, I was a Marine for 20 years, the more physical hardship you endure, it doesn't make you softer. Maybe on the inside, hopefully, ideally. But on the outside, it makes you more tough. It raises your pain tolerance. It raises, I ran past points when I thought humanly possible. I thought, well, I'll take another step and I'll die. And I went another 5 miles, in the Marine Corps. So, to the extent that we are able to be the little girl that in the movie you're talking about and push out is to the extent that we learn new things. I'm reminded of and this is my last point before I turn it back over to you, but I'm reminded of this phrase that I'm trying to learn. It's in Latin, but I heard it from Jordan Peterson, and it's inster quintilis invenitur. And it says, if you want the most growth, you go to the darkest place. You go to the edge, the chaos of the young daughter. Okay, what do you think about that? I'll turn it back over to you.
Yeah, well, what I had written, I'm taking notes, by the way. Do you see it? Like, I love, because if I don't, I forget it. But you said, like, it makes you tough, and you're like, maybe not like hard skin tough, but like still soft on the inside. But I think what it does, it gives you, yes, risk tolerance, but it gives you the evidence you can survive. And your body's just looking for evidence, right? So if you just like push a little bit, right? If you just go into a little bit of that dark area, and you realize you can survive it, like just dim the light a little bit, let your eyes adjust. Okay, this is okay. Dim it a little bit more. Right. Your eyes will adjust. It's like people talk about breaking out of your comfort zone. You have to expand it. You can't just jump out of it because you're tethered to it. And it's like, it's a bungee. It's going to pull you right back, right? Or a rubber band that hasn't quite been stretched. If you stretch it too far, it's just going to break. You have to slowly kind of massage that and it'll go with you. So I think that as in certain areas like the Marines, you're forced out of your comfort zone. Like that's not, you don't get to gradually just, it's, there, when you go into a situation like that, and your body is forced to do that and you survive it, I think that people feel tougher because it's evidence you're going to survive it. Your body says, oh, I can handle anything. And so that risk tolerance drops. But if you are somebody who, where I was like in a 9 to 5 that I didn't want to be in, but I couldn't just wake up one morning and just quit my job, right? It felt like just jumping out of an airplane without a parachute. That's stupid. You're not going to do that. You have to find ways to expand your comfort zone just slowly and stretch it until eventually, when I walk in and I quit that job, it still feels like jumping out of a plane, but now I feel like I have a parachute, right? Right. Because I have some evidence that I've gone into the dark places, right? You've done some uncomfortable things, tested the limits. Now your comfort zone is a little bit bigger and you can do more things. Right.
Absolutely. I'm going to give you the next rabbit hole, but to your point, well, I don't have all the right words for this, but a friend told me there's a part of your brain, inner brain, and there's 3 Latin words for it, and my brain doesn't hold on to them. But every time you do something you don't want to do, you decide to do something you don't want to do, that part of your brain expands. Well, how does that affect you? It makes you just more confident in every situation. Like when you choose to do the hard things, when a hard thing pops up, you're like, I know how to handle that already. You
Yes.
know, but yeah,
Yeah.
it's your rabbit hole
Well,
term. So,
no,
or
that's rewiring your brain, right? That's that big term around is rewiring your brain. You rewire it small little steps, neuron by neuron, right? You just forming you're letting the old neural pathways die off by not engaging in the negativity or whatever it is that you want to get rid of, and you are building the new ones by engaging in the habits that you do want to partake in or to have, be a part of your life, right? So yeah, I mean I don't know what the terms are for all of that. I do know that we
right,
instinctively I do know that we instinctively react out of like the amygdala. It's the fight or flight, fight, fright, fleas or freeze. I think they have like fawn now, where basically you
right.
just like don't do anything. You just
You
like
try and look cute
faint.
and
I don't
harmless.
know. Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, maybe that's what it is. Um, but that's where kind of emotional intelligence and being aware of how you think and feel, because when you instinctively are in that amygdala portion, if you can stop for, I think it's like no emotion, no fear, no, instinctive feeling can last longer than 90 seconds.
I've heard that.
Yeah, as long as you're not thinking a thought that perpetuates it. If you can just sit in the feeling of it, eventually it leaves, and now you can flip over and you can think from a different part of your brain. You can think from your prefrontal cortex. You can think from that portion of your brain that can say, okay, I'm really glad I didn't do that because that would have been bad. I'm glad I paused and didn't send that angry text and I
Right.
was able to delete it. So it is flipping that. It's the rewire. It's rewiring your brain.
Yeah.
It's an interesting piece how we are, because they used to think that we were stuck where we're at. That once you were to a certain point, it's like the whole neuroplasticity that your brain couldn't change. Once you were, I
Right.
think it was like mid to late 20s, and now they know you can. Right? You can totally you can rewire everything in there and form new beliefs. And the Civil War piece, right? Take that Civil War, which part of that is that negative feeling person? That's the part. What do they
Yeah. Well, and I like to think in terms of you're inviting them back to the table. Like, hey, who's over there shooting at people? Hey, come on over here. What are you hoping to get out of that? You want ice cream on Thursdays? Come on back in, join the fold. We'll get you ice cream or whatever. I mean, that's kind of shallow, but I've had to say, to agree with one of those voices to get them back, I had to say, you know what? You want me to never say anything negative against myself again? Done. Come on back. And like a good portion of myself came back over to the table and said, I think we're going to be on the same team now. You know,
Well, and I need to shout out, which he's no longer with us, I don't think. Dr. Richard Schwartz is the therapist I had talked about earlier that kind of broke out of the traditional therapy model. And he wrote a book, I think it's called No Bad Parts. And it talks about internal family systems, like your inner child, right? You have an inner child. You might have an inner critic. You might have, that person who just wants to like throw fist when something happens. But what he does is like what you were saying is like talk to that portion of you, like sit with it. Which this is kind of, we can go down that rabbit hole. I don't know how you feel about meditation, but this to me is the purpose of
do it.
meditation, is to sit with your thoughts. Meditation literally means to become familiar with. So to meditate alone is to become familiar with yourself. Just to know what you're thinking in a very everybody thinks it's to stop thinking. You're supposed to meditate to stop your thoughts. Nah, you can't really do that. Maybe if you're like a seasoned monk, you could eventually get to that point. But it's really just to become aware of what you're thinking and then to get
Yeah.
curious about it. Eckhart Tolle calls it being the watcher. To non-judgmentally say, that's funny, I was thinking that, I wonder why. And
Yeah.
then Dr. Richard Schwartz would say, sit and tune into that. Like, where do you feel that voice coming from? Is it in your throat? Do you feel it in your gut? Get curious. What does it want? And I've
Yeah.
done this and I've asked some other people to do it. And sometimes it's like, they're like, it says I need time. Like, I think I just need time to relax. Or I'm scared this person will leave. So all of these actions, all of this inner civil war is really from these deep inherent beliefs and thoughts that sometimes we don't even know we have. We don't
Yeah.
even really know till we sit and get quiet and get curious. If there's one word, just get curious about why
Yeah.
you feel and think and do the things that you do. So much comes up when you just stop judging yourself and get curious about it.
Yeah, and I think this ties, I mean, exactly perfect to listening because you listen to yourself in that meditation time. You hear all the little voices come out to say what they've been trying to say, you know.
Yeah, in between, like you're sitting there, because a lot of people are like, sometimes I'll meditate and I'll end up, I'm like, I don't know if you even film these, but right now I'm like, have my eyes closed showing how I meditate. No one can see it. But sometimes I'll be meditating and I'll come up with like my grocery list. What do I have to do tomorrow? And oh, I wonder if my kids are home yet. What was that sound I just heard out the window? Like all of those things are going to happen, and it doesn't mean that you're a bad meditator. You just bring yourself back. Oh, that's funny that I heard that noise, and back to where I was. Just like give yourself permission to be bad at it, and eventually you'll start to find out some of those deep inner thoughts. But a lot of people can't get to that point when they first start meditating because they're like, I can't sit for longer than 30 minutes without, needing to check my email or whatever. But just start small. I think you'll be surprised what you find. Like listening to yourself will also enable you to start listening to others. And it's what you get, what you give, you get. It's like this cycle.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. I want to talk about that for the rest of the time too, but I was thinking another term that is kind of new to me is called metacognition. And they define that as you can listen to your thoughts. And it's another level, a higher level of awareness and existence, I guess. What do you think about that?
Yeah, metacognition, that's what it is, right? Thinking about your thinking. That's literally what it is. Think a thought and then go a little deeper. I just like to ask myself why. Metacognition to me is trying to figure out why you think the thoughts that you think, but for a productive manner, right? I think a lot of people have heard the term or the phrase, you have to know your why. Like, why are you doing something? Why is it even important? Metacognition is a way that you can go. Like, I think it's Simon Sinek might do it. I think Dean Graziosi does it also. It's like 7 layers deep. Ask yourself, like, find a thought and then ask yourself, why do you think that? Go again. Why do you think that? Why are you thinking that? Go 7 layers deep and you will find this root cause that, I'll just be like transparent here. I've done this several times, and a root belief that I realized I had from long ago was that I'm not a lovable person. So this was showing up, and I didn't know that. I would blame everything. Well, they're acting like this. I wish they would just listen more. If they could just do this, why do they have to do that? Getting down, well, why do I want them to do that? Well, it would help me in this way. Why do I want that? Why do I want that? Getting all the way down because I want to feel loved. Like, wow, that's why I want them to take the trash out? Like, who knew? I just thought it was because it felt dirty in the kitchen. Like, I don't know. Yeah. But that's metacognition on paper. Like, that's where journaling comes into play, right? People are like, why do I journal? Because get it on paper. So it just it like unravels things. It's like trying to undo a knot with your fingernails. Like, that's what your brain is like. Your thoughts and your emotions are so caught up, you can't separate one from the other. If you put pen to paper, all of a sudden now you're able to separate the thought from the emotion and think about your thinking without feeling about your thinking. Because that's where we get messed up.
Yeah. And I think we're just filling up a toolbox with all different kinds of ways to apply or the benefits of listening. But just to summarize, we're talking about how it affects conversation, how it affects my relationship with myself, and by that, every other relationship I have. And I think I want to back up just a second and think about listening. And because this is stuck in my brain as well. I heard somebody say that if you want to practice listening, like this is beyond couple therapy level of understanding, but I loved how simple it was. It's you listen and you don't say anything and you have no response at all until you summarize and reflect back what the person just said. And I don't know what's going on in my life right now, but I have just recently been the benefactor of 2 of my friends starting to do this in phone conversations with me. And I got to tell you, from the other side, I've kind of been doing it or practicing it. You can tell I'm thinking about it. It's working its way through my brain and into my actions. But like for me to experience it from that side, and I can't say they got it from me because this is something new for me, but I'm experiencing it. And they're like, what I heard you say is that this is going on for you right now. And it's very exciting. And, and you don't know what's next or whatever. And I'm like, wow, that's what that feels like. That feels nice. I'm like, you have unlimited potential, my friend, because you have learned how to listen. And, they, of course, accept that compliment. And they're like, thank you for noticing. And I'm like, no, thank you for, whatever. Anyway, I go all day. Yeah, the concept is like how easy to explain listening is. And if you break it down into a few steps, well, there's the invisible step. And I'm going to go back to that and then I'm going to come to you. But the invisible step is, and maybe the most powerful and important, remove distractions. And an example of that that I do is if I'm in an important conversation like the one we're having right now, but it could be just me talking with a friend over coffee. I turn everything to do not disturb, my phone upside down, completely separate and maybe make that space sacred to increase my ability to be able to listen to the other person. So I'm sorry, but it's your turn. What do you
No,
think?
don't apologize. It's funny because you said what I would say too is that being able to repeat what someone has said is a little bit of a telltale. Were you listening? Right?
Yeah.
Being able to summarize, and it makes them feel heard. Right? It makes them feel heard to know that you were engaged and heard everything that they said. Right? And I think one thing, because now first, because you were like, I don't know if they got that for me or not, but I think that's a testament to you get what you give. If you start
Yeah.
giving that listening, it comes back to you. They might not be consciously choosing to do it, but it's a part of how you guys interact now. It has to start somewhere. And so what you give, the majority of the time, I'm not going to call it a rule, but I do live by this rule because I choose to. What I give, I will get. And so I think because you started listening, they returned that. Maybe they knew, maybe they didn't. But I will say one thing that, because I've had to work on my listening skills. I was not always a great listener. I still struggle with it sometimes. And so I've had to go into those whys, into that metacognition and say, why do I struggle with listening? And what I've come up with, and anybody who feels like you struggle with listening, is I had to let go of the need to help. Because if you are listening with an intent of how am I going to help them, now the distraction is not your phone. The distraction is not the TV. Your distraction is your thoughts. It's like this internal distraction. And that's what I struggle with letting go of. And I have to say, no, you don't have to help. You don't have to be ready for a response. You're literally just going to be here. But letting go of helping for a lot of people is hard. They're trying to look for, I can help them with that. I can help them with that. I have something for that. So I think being engaged, but also being willing to let go of any expectation you have of where that conversation will go.
Yeah.
And then you can be present with it.
Yeah. Well, and as you learn to be the observer, as you brought up from the book you quoted, of yourself, that frees up so much time. And this now I can wander into my personal experience. That frees up so much time. Like it's almost my favorite music for my wife to say, I don't understand why you did that. And I'm like, oh, I pull up a chair, I get a pillow behind me. I like get in a comfortable position and I'm like, wow, tell me more about that feeling burst or whatever. Let it wash over me. And I'm absolutely serious. And, and wherever she is in our little RV, she comes over, she sits down and she's like, well, I guess I just, she tells me everything. Like, I guess I just got a lot going on right now. And I'm like, okay, yeah, and it's so much, once you get into it, it's like the most fun I feel like two humans can have. Well, debatable, okay, but it's up there on most fun things that humans can have is to truly be listened to and take that feeling in. And that, has a lot to do with each person is going to handle listening and feel it probably differently. They're not going to have my experience necessarily. But what do you think?
Yeah. I love the tell me more piece. I mean, sometimes it's just tell me more about that. And I know that I have found sometimes I have to, whether it's with a partner, a good friend, a best friend, with my kids, that sometimes if they start talking and I might have to stop and be like, okay, especially because I'm a coach, because I'm a life coach, because I sometimes live in that space, I have to stop. And if you are somebody who likes to help others fix their problems, to stop and say, okay, do you just set that expectation? Do you just want to vent right now? Do you just want me to listen or do you want me to help? And sometimes they're like, no, I want your advice. I'm like, okay, then I will listen from that space. And sometimes they're like, no, I just really need to vent. Then I'm like, all right, I'm going to listen from that space. And they'll vent and we'll just, like have a beer over it or whatever. So really kind of setting that expectation after they talk and be like, do you want my help or you just need my ears?
Yeah.
And I think it's okay to ask that sometimes so you know how to show up for them, because how do you know if you don't ask? I think it's okay to ask those questions.
Well, and yeah, it's almost like you're saying, I think it's okay to communicate clearly and set boundaries. And, that reinforces that it's not okay. Okay sounds great, but it's epic. In today's society, as I look at all the relationships in my life, that you put out those boundaries and they're very clear and you communicate and you give them a choice. Autonomy, right? That's another whole rabbit hole. And we do have time for another rabbit hole, but I want to see you writing stuff down. So if you have something you want to go back to, we can.
Right. Yeah. And that's my way of letting go of my mental distractions. When I hear something like, write that word down, that way then I can be present, right? One thing that came up though is we talk about being present in conversations and being there and listening. And I'd love to know your experience with it. And you use the word boundaries. One boundary I've had to kind of draw is that this is a huge thing. I don't know how much you experience it, but text messaging. I will not have a conversation. Like, I cannot listen to you. Like, I can't have, like, if my kids are like, I got to tell you something, let's have a phone call. We're not texting this conversation. We can have a phone call. We can FaceTime, or you can come over. Right. But that's something that I think has hindered people's ability to listen, is that so many big conversations are had through texting, through commenting, and there's no emotional, I wouldn't say no, there is less emotional engagement, right, and there's less emotional vulnerability. You are less vulnerable when you just text or comment or send somebody an email or a message. And I think vulnerability is a huge piece that we could go down to, because if you are not willing to be vulnerable and let that person on the other side really kind of see who you are, it makes them hard for them to listen. It makes me hard to listen to someone who's hiding things, who's not. And of course, we have a boundary of who we're willing to be vulnerable with and who we're not. But to a certain extent, being who you are and being yourself. And I think the more vulnerable we can be, the more available we can be to just really show ourselves and all of our flaws, the better conversations we have, the more people are going to want to listen, because you have to want to listen to someone. You have to have a reason and a why to listen. And I think that comes from caring about that person, respecting that person, and trusting that person. And all three of those things come from seeing somebody be vulnerable. So I mean, I don't know where that goes, but I think vulnerability is something hard. And I think it's been taken away by not having in-person conversations.
Yeah, and I can agree definitely with text messages. I hadn't thought about how vulnerability is taken away. We only think about, well, for me, I can only speak to me. Well, I can speak for my wife too, to some extent, but we read the text message based on what level of civil war we are at. So if I read no, not now, and I hear anger, well, guess what? I came up with the anger. The anger came from my battle, perhaps, and I've noticed a distinct change in my text message tactics, a distinct change from being at peace. When you I don't know if you ever reconcile your whole Civil War. You're always finding like a guy over there doing something, and you're like, hey, what are you doing over there? Come on in, join the group or whatever. But I think you can mostly resolve it to where no harmful things are done anymore from any side. And in that space, like I've noticed, I read text messages completely different. But I also agree with you that like setting a boundary, and I will usually draw if I am unclear, because I see things a certain way, almost see everybody else. This is my biggest flaw. Yes, this is confession time, ladies and gentlemen. My biggest flaw is that I see other people that they are exactly the same as me and will do what I do. And in a lot of ways, it's trusting them to be like me. And in this situation, like it does me no service. And I'm learning to ask more questions, I guess. So if you're struggling in that area with me, ask more questions. But learning to ask more questions and assuming I don't know. And so if I got a text message and Jill's like, oh, it sounds like they're angry, then I'm like, maybe I don't have enough answers. Maybe I don't understand fully what's going on here. And you could just straight say it. Well, and I'm preaching through, I know you're battling and maybe even a few steps above in different words with better words, like more tools in this scenario than me. But you asked me, so that's where I'm at.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. It really is, because you said it. You said that I came up with that anger myself, right? You're basically
Right.
proposing what, I want to say psychology and everything has said, that we mirror, like whatever emotion we're seeing from someone, it's a mirror from us. We're kind of, I don't want to say causing that, in essence, we're not
Right.
causing that emotion. But if you see anger, what is it you think that they're angry about? You think they're angry about something you've done. The only reason you can think that is if you think you've done it.
Right.
You have to notice a truth in it, or you would not react to it. It's almost, this is a very weird question, this is going to come out of left field, but I'll explain it.
Do it.
But what if, because you were like, I came up with that anger. And if we are a mirror for everything, right? We're going to, because that is the way other people are our mirror on purpose, because it's calling out in us what we need to pay attention to, what we need to fix, right?
Yeah.
So really, in essence, we're only really ever having a conversation with ourselves, or with our inner civil war, if you want to say.
Right.
Right? Because we are portraying that in some way, shape, or form. I heard an example once that I loved, and I've used it. Her name is Brooke Castillo. She's a life coach, and she's amazing. But she illustrated it in this way. So if someone were to come up to you and say, hey, so they come up to you and they look at you. Now, granted, you don't have blue hair, right? Your hair is not blue, but if I came up to you and said, oh my God, I hate your blue hair, it looks ridiculous on you. You would look back at me and just look at me like, okay, there would be confusion. You would have no reaction to that, because there's not a single part about you that thinks you have blue hair or has some sort of subconscious worries about what someone would think of your blue hair. You have no emotional reaction to it, right?
Right.
But if somebody come up to you and said, you'd really look better without glasses on, then you might have, because you wear I don't know what your thoughts are about glasses. That might get a reaction from you, an emotional reaction, because there's a part of you that knows that is true. You will not react to anything that you don't see truth in. So if you read a text message and say, oh, they sound angry, number one, you can't hear a text message. They didn't sound anything. Right. Number two, what do you think that they're angry about? What did you do that you think they're angry about? Because that's where the truth is. You actually believe a truth in that, right? If someone says that I was hateful and I react to it and get defensive, then there's a part of me that thinks that maybe I have been hateful.
Right.
Right? So we're only ever reacting and conversing with what we believe about ourselves, or what we believe about that other person, which is also just what we believe.
Yeah.
I know that's out there, but
no, I don't think it's out there at all. I mean, I think it is as much as esoteric as it needs to be, but I think we're putting it, as we said in the Marine Corps, we're putting the cookies on the bottom shelf here. I mean, we're breaking it down and making it kind of accessible.
Well, it promotes a solution, because one of my biggest things that I always say is that the only reason we want anything in life, the only reason we want a better relationship, or maybe a better career, or a different job, or whatever it is, the only reason we want anything is because of how we think we will feel when we get it. If you want more money, why? Because you think you'll feel free, because you think you'll have this. What will freedom feel like? It'll feel joyous, Why do you want the car? Why do you want the job? It's only, if you trace it down, because of how you think you're going to feel. We're all just chasing a feeling, right? We're all just chasing a feeling. And guess what? You have control over your feelings, because you have control over what you think and what you believe. You will feel according to what you believe, and you have 100% control over what you decide to believe. It will control how you feel. That's all you're chasing anyway. So if we just start with believing what we choose to believe and make that belief something that feels good, you will act out of that good feeling emotion, and every result, every encounter you have will be way better than the one you could have if you acted out of a belief and an emotion that does not serve you and does not feel good.
Yeah.
Did that follow?
Well, absolutely, and I can put my own words to it. For sure, like I set my goal on feeling an uninterruptible peace. And I guess that's where my journey comes in with the Civil War, is I wanted peace in here. And that peace in here is making peace around me in everybody I know. Because as I become a peacemaker, I guess that's a really good term to use, then other people start to see the benefit of the peacemaker, and then they start to seek their own peace in their own lives. And so in that way, like I'm acting out what I believe and I'm taking steps to make what I believe. And that's the part we control. I think we intersect there in that we have control over our actions, and our actions dictate they act out what we believe, but they also dictate what we feel.
Yeah, it's a circle. You act, you take an action, you get a result. That result's going to make you feel something. That feeling is going to motivate you to do something. You're going to do something and get something. And it cycles, right? And that's the rewiring. That's what wires our brain, is those cycles and those patterns.
Yeah, I love it. I love that. I'm a fan of it. And, there's things that I don't want to do, as we talked about. And you can generate everybody could generate their own list of things that they don't want to do. And I keep those and I hold them over to the side, this just in case list. And if I dip at all in feeling amazing, I just go knock out a few hours worth of the things I don't want to do. And it brings me back up to feeling amazing for a few days at least, depending on how much I do. But yeah.
Yep. Yeah. And your reason for doing those things you don't want to do is because at the end you'll feel amazing. Right? You're just chasing that feeling of being amazing. I just want to feel this way. And so I know if I do this, I will get there. Right? But it's tuning into that knowing of that feeling and wanting that feeling and feeling a little bit out of it that actually makes you want to do those things. Well, now I want to go take care of them and get them done.
Yeah. Well, and it's, to switch metaphors for a second, it's like throwing votes in the bucket. Well, I went running. I want to go run. Maybe I can call myself a runner. No, you can't. At that point. Well, I've run 1,000 times. I'm a runner. I put enough votes into that bucket to be able to claim that title. We're about to go world exploring. I visited enough countries now that I feel comfortable saying I am a world explorer or whatever.
Okay, so that's funny. Can I comment on that?
Definitely, please.
Okay. Because this is like when we talked about like our body looking for evidence. It doesn't want to accept anything until it has the evidence. And we can do that in things like running. I want to be a runner. You felt like you needed evidence before you could call yourself a runner. You needed, right? But there are some areas in our life where we have to, because I do identity work, right? I teach people how to shift their identities, how to get what you want through assuming that identity. Becoming the person that your goal requires you to be. Right? So if I'm going from a 9 to 5, I used to work for UPS. I was a delivery driver. I drove the brown trucks, right? That's not what I wanted to do. I wanted to move into the space where I was speaking. I was being a coach. I wanted to be a life coach, an identity coach. It all has kind of morphed into what it is now. But I could never have got my first coaching client if I had to wait to get my first coaching client before I called myself a life coach. I had to assume the identity of a life coach before I was ever going to get my first client. Right? So many people are stuck because they're waiting for this evidence that you can just decide. You can just decide. I called myself a speaker before I ever got my first speaking engagement. I had to. Who's going to hire someone to speak if they say, no, I'm not a speaker yet?
Right.
Right? So you have to assume that identity and you have to find evidence where it exists now. If you have ever ran from a dog, you are a runner. You can just call and you can believe that, right? When I spoke at a morning meeting, even if it was just for 2 minutes at UPS, I'm a speaker because I spoke today. Right? When my friend asks me for advice and she comes back and says, that was really good advice, I'm glad you gave that to me, I am a coach. Right. So I had to find that evidence years ago before it ever was there. So that's me choosing to believe. Was I a coach? I had never been paid to coach at that point, but I could choose to believe anyway that it was true. Your belief, it does not matter if it's true or not. We try to convince ourselves, well, it's got to be true. It doesn't matter if it's true, right? Hundreds of years ago, it was not true that the world was flat, but enough people believed it that no one ever got in a boat to go look. Somebody had to come and believe that the world was round. Oh, they're going to get in a boat and they're going to go chase that and they're going to find out what happens, right? But that belief that the world was flat was never true. It was never, ever true. Well, but it kept people stuck. Yeah.
And in that way, too, I can see go back to like pushing into chaos and pushing into the unknown. and in that way too, you're pushing into the unknown. Do you have, 1,000 speaking engagements in your belt? No, you don't. Not the technical ones. Do you have 1,000 informal? Perhaps, where you spoke to somebody or they asked you to lead the meeting or, on and on and on. While maybe we just need to change our definition of what is proof, at some
Absolutely.
level. You're right, because, well, and then you're just chasing your passions. You're like, I'm showing up as a good listener that wants to help people. Is there a job that fits that? And then, like, based on who I see myself showing up as, I choose a vocation and I claim it.
That's such an important piece right there that you said, because some people don't know what they want. I have a lot of people that will come to me, and I was in this space in the very beginning, which is I don't know what I want. I just know what I don't want. I don't know
Yeah,
what I want to be. I just know where I don't want to be. So they might not know, like if you're listening, you might not know what other job you want. You might not know exactly what that relationship is or who that person is. But do you know how you want it to feel? I know that I want to feel like if you can just tune into what you want that to feel like, you're going to start having things come up that you can do, right? Like you were like, I just want to be a good listener. In my head, I was like, I just want to help people. I had all this information, right? And I just want to share it with people. I didn't know that that looked like speaking on stages and being a coach. I didn't know that until I just started saying, okay, I am somebody who helps people, right? I am somebody who listens well and offers advice when needed, right? I'm somebody who shows up confident. I'm somebody who's not afraid to speak if the moment arises. Like those are the kind of identity pieces that you can grab onto and decide that you are that type of person. And then
yeah,
watch what happens. Like it's changing who you are so that will change the circumstances. It'll change your situations, and we're all sitting around for the situation to change, for the circumstance to change, so that we can be
right.
somebody different. You have to be somebody different, and then you will have the power to change your circumstance and your situation.
I completely agree. At this point, I'm going to have to close down the podcast, but man, it's been amazing to have this conversation with you. And I really appreciate you bringing just so much knowledge, so much insight, your personal work, some vulnerability. I mean, the list is too long. I have about 35 things written on my list over here. And, maybe I should read some of them.
Hey, I've got a paper.
But,
It's all good. We're both over here writing.
but thank you for showing up for us today.
Well, thank you. I have thoroughly had a blast. I've missed these kind of conversations, like just being able to go down a rabbit hole and talk about what comes up. So I appreciate you having me. It has truly been so much fun.
Yeah, thank you. Well, and maybe it's going to be a little addictive, and it's going to spread and maybe a little contagious, but for you and in your life and your relationships, you can be like, well, maybe, as it is for me, well, maybe I'll try this listening on the hardest person I have, or something. I don't know. I know I'm reaching and making extreme predictions, but also I want to thank our listeners for tuning in today and just I hope you can feel the excitement in this conversation of people that are seeing these basic, simple, kind of easy to understand steps and we're seeing our lives change. So, but thank you for tuning in and thank you for listening. And if you can listen a little bit more, you won't regret it.